he has. So Colette, after Wednesday last night, Colette sent me a text with, who's that lady from Africa?
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, I know.
That's cute.
Well, she was curious because I guess her mother was a missionary. And it wasn't in the province of Africa, but it was, I don't know, somewhere over there. So she was immediately, yeah, she wanted to know more about you and what you were doing. How are you, Betty?
I'm good. So you need 2 people to sign the baptism paper?
No,
Not
you don't have to
anymore?
sign.
Oh, okay.
It's just a matter
Because I
of-
know in the past you used to have a couple of witnesses sign, and it was customary, or maybe actually mandatory, that they be a member of the church,
Yeah.
which I had been a baptized member of the church, so once you're baptized, I don't think that goes away, even
No,
if
it
you're
doesn't.
right.
No, it does not.
So I figured I was okay, but I didn't, you had said something about Chris, and I was like,
But you know what?
I'm sure she's baptized, but
To me, it's
you don't follow, you don't
No,
worry
a lot
about
of
it,
that,
okay. To me
dogma,
too,
the rigor of the church,
okay. You've done
It's
away with
irrelevant.
it. Okay.
It's irrelevant.
I agree with you.
I will give her a baptismal
Just-
certificate.
I'm just not sure
Yeah.
whether it'd get you into trouble.
No.
Yeah, okay.
no, those days are gone too. The Inquisitions are all disbanded.
Oh,
I mean, you
I
know.
hope so. It doesn't look like it from the news sometimes.
Well, yeah, it depends though on the communities that you're in. I mean,
Exactly.
the Presbyterian Church, PCUSA, has no,
It's always been,
there's no standing to try to do anything like that, you know? Except when we got into the whole gay and lesbian issue, and then we had
Plan B light or something like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
people from the South coming up,
Yeah.
joining the churches so that they could bring charges against the elders that were gay.
Mm.
I mean,
That was wonderful, huh?
yeah, those are just
It looks like those days are coming back. Well, that's the scary part.
Yeah, they're coming back, but they're joining, they're making their own churches.
They're mostly evangelical, non-denominational, but
The more they do that, the further I retreat from the dogma of Christianity. Really, I like.
I just didn't want to get you into trouble, because I was thinking about that, and I was like, I have been baptized in the Presbyterian Church, and I don't think that ever goes away, just like once an elder, always an elder, they say.
Yeah.
So there you go. Even though I'm Muslim, it still applies, I guess. So I thought, that's okay, but anyway, kind of
No,
funny.
for me, it was, what I've come down to after all these, you know, it used to be, we would never do a baptism in the Presbyterian Church if it wasn't in worship. I mean, that's where the baptism
That's
has
true
happened.
too, right, right.
It's a
In the-
worship event because
In the
it
community.
engages the whole community and the
Right.
support and nurture.
But if you can't do it that way,
Well,
what can you do?
look at the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't always done that way.
Yeah, and the
Exactly.
model for me, this is when what was his name? Nathan is riding along with, like who it was?
The eunuch?
Yeah, the eunuch.
Right.
And he looks over and he
Yes,
goes,
right.
is there any reason why I can be baptized right here, right
No,
now?
not
And
at
the
all.
answer was, no, none. And that's how I looked at it when Judy said, I like to be baptized.
There's your
So,
example.
What I said to her was, well, you should come, you know, used to come to church. Since COVID, she hasn't really been here that much.
I thought she looked a little familiar, but.
Yeah, she used to come late, she'd come in late, she was, you know, she was here. But then COVID came and all of a sudden she, you know, just wasn't back. But she comes to talk to me, and so I said to her, sure, you can be baptized, just come right up in church. And she's like,
I know, she didn't
I'm
really.
way too bashful.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
She's been talking about this for a
Oh.
long time.
2 years.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't grow up in the church.
No, she did not. Yeah, no, she did not grow up in the church. So, again, it's just
We're
like,
making it happy
is there
and
any
nice.
reason that I shouldn't be baptized? No,
No,
there's no
right.
reason at all.
That's funny. I know Jack had me teaching Sunday school even after I became a Muslim. I was like, he said, do you have any objections to it? I said, no, not really. It'll be a lively conversation.
What age group? What age group?
Oh, I had them from, because at that point, the group of kids were so small, it kind of covered up. It was like the little red schoolhouse, you know, you got everybody in the same class.
All right, well, I don't know
I see.
if Barbara's gonna join us or not.
Oh. You know what? She works till 10 o'clock. If she doesn't get out earlier, she hits traffic. She
Yeah,
may
she'll
still come
in.
on.
I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
I just have to watch because the way this works, oh, there's Colette. Okay, as long as I have one other person, then I can do that and get, oh, there are the multiple
There she
screens.
is.
And she's,
Barbara's there too.
They won't let me do that until they sign on.
oh.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Okay, so we are back to listen again to 3rd Isaiah. 3 Isaiah. The voice that wanted to be thought of as Isaiah, but we know wasn't Isaiah. Yeah. Who knows what chapter we did last?
I think we did 60 and we are up to 61,
Right.
especially since I like the beginning of 61. I want to read it.
Yes. Well, I liked the beginning of 60, and it went downhill after that.
Well, the beginning's good, but
Yeah. Arise, shine, for your light has come. The glory of the Lord has been risen upon you. Darkness shall cover the whole earth. And then from that whole paragraph about the light, then comes the bad news for the rest of the world. But, okay.
yeah.
And, you know,
Why do
just,
other people have to be put down, huh?
I don't know. And again, we get back into this thing of I refuse to turn off my brain when I open my Bible. And I can't help it. I see the longings and the mechanisms of human beings in this. And this whole thing about arise, shine is wonderful, but it's you will rise up and everybody else will bow down to you. Everybody else will become a servant to you. And they will do that because you are the preeminent people of the earth.
Right.
And
Or if that isn't human, I don't know what is.
yeah, that is human. It is totally human. And the contrast to the rest, it's like a golden thread. I've said this all along. The golden thread which weaves through this is when the voice of God says, keep my commandments. The commandment that God is given is the commandment of mission, which is, I will make you a blessing to the families of the earth. And you have a preeminent role because you'll be the means by which the blessings of God will be doled out into the world and in the order of neediness, to the needy first. That's not me making that up. That's in here. But, yeah, quite frequently.
And it doesn't say just to your own tribe or, immediate neighbors.
Yeah.
It's to anyone you meet.
Yeah, in fact, it almost makes the reverse expectation by saying to those that are sojourners first, to those who are orphans first, the foreigner amongst you, all the telltale signs of the presence of God. Jesus said to his disciples, he sent them out, right, in little teams of mission, and he said, if you go to a village or a town and you don't find hospitality, get out. Get out. And the message is, get out, because the presence, spirit, the Shekinah of God is not present in that town. So the mark of God is hospitality. Until you get the 2nd or 3rd Isaiah.
Okay.
Well, there are a few other places.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, are there. And we've been battling, I don't know how else to summarize it, but the idea of, what have we been calling it? It's the exchange. You do this for me and I'll do that for you.
Transformation,
What did you say?
transactional,
That's it.
right.
A transactional relationship, so that when you're listening to the way humans understand relationships, it's transactional. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. If things are going bad in your life, then you must have done something bad with God. And if things are going good, especially if you're rich, or if you've come to power, or you won the battle yesterday, then that's God is blessing you. God has taken up your side because you have done something right. Again, your words, that's human to me. That is human.
Yeah.
But the
And
place
boy,
is,
that prosperity church business really plays right into that.
oh, it does. It just does.
God has a plan for you. A new Mercedes. Don't worry about feeding the poor. We just, you deserve all the riches that you can grab. And that always, just like, have you not read this? But that is human nature. It's giving a green light to the worst aspects of human nature and calling it God's plan.
yeah, you don't hear the language quite as much, but it's still around, and that is that you don't help people by helping them. You help people by ignoring them. That way they,
Help themselves.
yeah, they have to figure out how to help themselves. And that during that period of Ronald Reagan, people pulled themselves up by their own
What if
bootstraps.
they don't have boots?
That's right. What if they don't have any shoes?
Right.
Like,
It's kind of
but-
difficult, but, yeah.
and I was just thinking about this yesterday because I drive around, I think, and I talk to even some of my friends who subscribe to that idea of, well, they got to help themselves first, and you can come along and I think to them, where did I come from? Like, where did I come from? Because I don't fit in that model. I don't. My thoughts don't fit in that model. They just don't. I just,
I feel sorry for those people.
Yeah.
I really do, because they don't get the pleasure.
right.
They really don't.
Yeah, and they don't get,
And it is very pleasurable.
that's what I was going to say, and it's pure pleasure. Like, it's the real benefit that there is in life. The rest of it is just made up. It's in search of a pleasure. Chris was talking about Jeff's company. Chris, the secretary, had taken the company to Cancun and got into one of those, island resorts
Yeah.
where,
Where my family is right now.
yeah, so
Only
you have this,
gated.
this gated wealth and
Exactly.
prosperity and people who are having fun, and that's how the idea is. That's what fun really is. And I'm not saying that isn't fun.
It is fun. The
But-
pictures look
yeah.
like they're having a lot of fun. But
Yeah, but there's nothing compared. There is nothing compared to the power of life and joy that is released in us as human beings when we are partners with people who are, they have this new phrase, instead of pull yourself up, give people a hand up. Give them a hand up and help them. Unfortunately, they pair that with, instead of a hand out. And I always say, look, you need both. Like,
yeah,
you
there's
need
a place
both.
for both. And
Yeah.
somebody who will go nameless at one point in our homeless sheltering program, when we had the homeless overnight, you only had enough time in the morning to, have a bagel and a cup of juice or a cup of coffee. You had no time to be cooking up a big breakfast, because the van got here like at 6 o'clock.
Oh.
And you're not waking them up at 4:30 so they can make blueberry pancakes.
Right.
That was the idea of this one person. And I said, that's a nice idea, but it's not going to fly. And she said, but I would like to show them how to make blueberry
Oh,
pancakes.
at 4:30 in the morning?
Exactly. To people who have no pots, pans, kitchen.
Oven.
I'm like, something's awry here.
We
This
run
is
into
not-
that so
yeah.
often. People are so clueless.
Like, just think about it. But anyway, and the idea, I'm sure, was meant well, but.
Oh, yeah, there's good intentions, but,
Exactly.
they say
It's
about
just
good
not
intentions.
feasible.
If you have good intentions and you don't follow those to see the consequences, then they weren't good intentions to begin with.
Okay.
It was just your momentary thought of how to do something well.
The other thing I said to her was, how do you know they don't know how to make?
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just missing the
They have
wherewithal.
all the rest of the stuff
Yeah.
that goes with it. Yeah,
Did you say that?
yes, I did.
Good for you.
Barbara knows.
Good morning, Colette. I haven't talked to you yet.
That's all right. I'm listening.
I'm just checking to make sure. All right, so let's read. Let's read Isaiah 61. And again, I'm going to say it because for our listeners online, just reminding you, I mean no disrespect to the organization of how the Bible is structured, but the book that is called Isaiah is clearly written in 3 different time periods. The first one has integrity of itself, the first Isaiah, and then the second Isaiah is written by one person. But the chapters of third Isaiah are not just written later, after the destruction and the efforts for restoration of Israel and the temple, but also these are not written by the same person. And I used to use that dumb illustration to say, well, how do literary people know that? How do you know? And I say, well, if you're reading along in a book that's supposed to be, written back in 500 BCE, and there's mention of a cell phone in it, you know that is not when this was written. And I can't see, quote, the cell phones in here, but they can. There are words that didn't exist, that did not exist, and then they appear here. So it dates itself, and it dates itself longer than one person's life could be. So it dates itself 300 years after the first episode. So, all right, so who's reading today?
And where does third Isaiah begin?
Third Isaiah begins, I thought I marked it in
50
here.
something.
Yeah, it's right around 50. Yeah, I think it is 50. I think it's chapter 50. But I'll check it for you so I can give it to you exactly.
It's probably in my study
I'll
Bible.
bet it is. It's probably right down in the footnote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to read again? You read so beautifully.
Gee. This is a long one. Maybe we should have 2 people read it, don't you think?
Sure.
Split it up. Why not?
Okay, I'll go through 7 then. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit. They will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord to display his glory. They shall build up the ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations. They shall repair the ruined cities, the devastations of many generations. Strangers shall stand and feed your flocks. Foreigners shall till your land and dress your vines. But you shall be called priests of the Lord. You shall be named ministers of our God. You shall enjoy the wealth of the nations, and in their riches you shall glory. Because their shame was double and dishonor was proclaimed as their lot, therefore they shall possess a double portion. Everlasting joy shall be theirs.
Okay, me? Okay. For I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing. I will faithfully give them their recompense, and I will make an everlasting covenant with them. Their descendants shall be known among the nations, and their offspring among the peoples. All who see them shall acknowledge that they are a people whom the Lord has blessed. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My whole being shall exult in my God. For he has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with a garland, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. For as the earth brings forth its shoots, and as a garden causes what is sown in it to spring up, so the Lord God will cause righteousness and praise to spring up before all the nations.
So it's a wonderful promise of God to a broken people. But it ties that restoration, in my mind. It's not as specific as I wish it was, but it ties the restoration to the original mission. That you shall be a blessing. You'll be among all the nations. You will share in their riches. You will be a part of all that's good. But you will do that in pursuit of your identity and your mission as the people of God, bringing the blessing of God to all the families of the earth. I'm going to say this again. I'm never quite sure. One of these days I'll actually go look it up in the original Hebrew. I don't understand always why sometimes they use the word justice and sometimes they use the word righteousness.
That's a pretty big difference, isn't it?
It's especially in
Yeah.
the English vernacular,
Yeah.
righteousness sounds a lot like religiosity. You know, it sounds like, you have a right relationship with God, as they used to say in the evangelical tense of conversion. You know, and righteousness was used almost exclusively in the King James version.
Yeah.
The King James translators like the word righteousness, and when the English translators now for new translations, they will use the word justice. I've said this, I think I can't go back and check it. I grew up going to church, Sunday school, all the way through the beginning of college. I never heard the word justice in relationship to the Bible or what God was calling us to. And then, there are traditions like in the AME church, African Methodist Episcopal Church, where all you hear about is justice. It's justice because it's a different perspective of where people are coming from.
Exactly.
The rich or the established, my family wasn't rich, but we were white, so we were part of the privileged group. We only ever referred to righteousness. But when you go among the people who are under the thumb or pushed out, you'll hear the word translated as justice.
I would hope that many people would think that righteousness includes justice.
I think it's supposed to.
I think it should.
I think it is.
Yeah.
The
I think righteousness
yeah.
is a bigger term.
Yes. It's also, righteousness, I think, has to do with one's relationship to God as well.
Right.
But then the justice has to do with one's relationship to others, or others' relationship to you. But I agree with you. The righteousness, in some ways, is a better word because it's more encompassing. But it's been co-opted by the religious language people to remove it. It has no earthly grounding.
Probably Elaine is right. Both of them together make a whole. Justice without righteousness can also be punitive.
Right.
So you
Good
need
point.
both, aspects to make it something palatable, something that you would want
Godly.
to see. Yes, godly. And for the lack of I couldn't think of the right word, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because righteousness
Interesting.
can get, like, I'm righteous, but those people are not.
Oh, yeah.
We deserve everything, but they don't, because they're not right with God.
Yeah.
And then justice, same thing. Justice, what does that mean? Can be bad, can be good.
Well, it does.
Depends on who's meting out the justice
Right.
and what your idea, so,
But
Yeah.
here it does say, "For I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing. Faithfully give them their recompense."
There's an interesting concept in verse 7. I almost took a whole course on it in seminary.
Wow.
Because their shame was double,
Yeah, what does that mean?
and their dishonor was proclaimed as their lot. This isn't the only place where this concept is referred to, but in the Reconstruction period, a lot of the preachers and a lot of the prophets were saying, oops, the suffering that you experienced from the loving God got out of hand. Yeah, and you experienced double the punishment that should have been yours for the kind of violation of the code of life. And there's, at another place in Isaiah, it says, tell the good news to the people, their punishment has been double what they deserve. And I almost feel like it's a Reconstructionist model to sort of reconstruct God in a way, to say, boy, that Babylonian captivity,
That's a little much, huh?
that was out of hand,
Went a little too far with that one.
we need more blessings.
Yeah, yeah, we
We deserve it.
we can't really, because so we didn't obey, right? Last night's psalm said, if the people had violated the commandments and everything, you could understand why bad things were happening. No, actually, the psalm we didn't read yet.
Yeah.
But the point is, okay, did God go a little overboard? And here, Isaiah is saying, on behalf of God, no, the suffering that you experience, which, by the way, almost exterminated Israel as the people of Jacob from the face of the earth, that was not God's intention. And I go, okay, how's that work? But because the prophets were trying to make sense out of life in this transactional way.
Right.
The Assyrians came in, they had power over the people of God. How could they have power? Well, you must have been doing something wrong. And then the Babylonians came in, and they committed cultural genocide and personal genocide. They tried to annihilate the existence of Jewish people. And they were pretty good at it. And so now the prophet is saying, well, good news, good news. God has come. Arise, shine, your light has come, your penalty has been paid, and oh, by the way, just in case there are hard feelings towards God, you should know that you received double.
And I get double blessings.
Yeah.
And there's a new covenant made. How many times do you need to renew that covenant? Because through the years, it doesn't look like you get all the blessings that you deserve.
Right.
Or, yeah, especially the Jewish people. Yeah. How do you explain that? Do you have to keep reading this passage over and over when things are bad? After the Second World War,
Well, that's it.
how did people feel about this particular passage?
And I've started watching a show on Netflix. I think I'll stay with it. But it's called, I think it's called Defeated Nation. And it's a drama written semi-factually on what life was like in Germany after the war. The horrible conditions that took place, for which no one felt sorry. No one had any regrets for anything that any German suffered, because the whole nation was blamed.
What they did.
Yeah, what they did. And the throngs of people that celebrated this horrible behavior, then they had to figure out how to pick up their lives and move on. Like, what about the children that were children during that time? But it didn't matter. The hate extended to them as well, and the suffering. And
but wisely, then there were institutions put in place that would combat that, because that was exactly what happened after the First
That's
World
right, that's
War.
what caused the conditions.
And they didn't want it to happen again. And so, you have to extend, maybe not love, but help to the German people and the Japanese people, because if for nothing else, you want to protect yourself in the future. It would be nice if it was extended because they're human beings and we love them, but
And they didn't all commit these crimes.
No, that's
You know,
right.
this is-
there's lots of children that
I-
are innocent people.
The other day, I went to a class the other day on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and they always say, well, the Germans didn't do anything. They let Hitler do whatever and let the army do. But the professor mentioned that there were 42 attempts at assassinating
Exactly.
Hitler. And unfortunately, that, and Bonhoeffer was in the resistance at that time. They didn't say that he was connected, although his good friend was definitely connected to one that almost happened. But, there was a resistance in Germany
Yep.
at the time.
And even in the upper ranks of the military, so
Right,
people did
right.
try, but they were eliminated. And if you knew somebody who knew somebody, you were, guilty by association, and that's
Right.
how the Nazis kind of ruthlessly got rid of anybody who had any opposition, which is what frightens me now about some of the rhetoric coming about how we're going to treat our political rivals in this
Mhm,
country. That is like,
It's so,
you never heard that.
so
before.
foreign, isn't it?
Well, it's so human,
Yeah, but it's very
but
foreign to our
it,
country.
it sounds just like something you don't want to relive from the last century. I mean, but it happens all around the world. It's just surprising to we as
Yeah.
Americans that we're hearing it. in
Yeah,
our
well,
own
we've had
country.
this
Because
lovely
we
bubble
think-
around.
We have the myth that we are the world's saviors, we do
Yeah.
everything right. But we do something.
I also have a question on the word oppressed. I'm just wondering, what is the politically correct word these days? I often hear underprivileged, disadvantaged, poor. Is there a way with dignity to talk to people, like, not that they're subhuman because they don't have the means to take care of themselves? Is there a word? Can anyone think of one?
Boy, that's something I've worked on hard, trying to figure out how to say that in a way
Right.
that's not offensive or degrading, Yeah.
Right.
I don't think there is a good one.
I think oppressed is a
Right.
pretty good word, though, because that implies that your predicament comes from outside
Right, somebody has done
yourself.
this.
Yeah, and
Right,
not your own
right.
character that caused that.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's the key, whatever the word, if we need a substitute, to call someone an oppressed person, to me opens a better image for them, because they're not the way they are, because they're a
Right.
failed person, or they're
Lazy.
lazy, but oppressed.
Right.
I mean, again, I've heard preachers, especially in the black church, who substitute words like shoved out, pushed down, things that point out that they got in the position they're in because of an action on the part of somebody, and not them. They have been cut off, they have been, disinherited, and all these words go to the heart of this, God is on the side, which is really on the side of the oppressed. And when I was a young preacher, I was in a rural church out in Hunterdon County, and I came out of the theology of Philadelphia and the black church, where they proudly proclaimed that God was on the side of the oppressed. But that land like hot coals in the ears of the established people who said, wait a minute, well, I thought God was on our side. You know, you're telling me that God is on the side of someone just because they're poor? Yes, because they don't have the comforts and the options and the power that you have. It's like, you know, Lazarus is example to the rich man, you know, who said, you know, let me go back and warn my brothers and sisters. It won't do any good. They have comfort. So the oppressed, yes, good news to the oppressed. And what does good news to the oppressed really mean? How do you bring good news to the oppressed? How do you move them back into the flow of life? I don't know. But this idea, this shocking idea, that not only is the suffering that goes on in the world not tied to behavior or faithfulness to God, but also it's possible for the world to invent its own kind of suffering, which is double whatever God would have done if God was going to punish somebody. You've received a double portion of the suffering. And then, of course, I want to know, how is that possible? But I thought God was running this show. I mean, do you think God runs the show? Let me answer. No, I don't. I think
The word punishing just doesn't go with God in my mind.
I'm with you.
I think most of the stuff that happens on Earth is because we're doing it to ourselves. There's always a human agent in it, unless it's a natural disaster, but even then.
Lots of times you can trace it back to some human behavior
That too,
yeah.
right. But things
But it's
happen.
still not God doing it, although some people, remember with the tsunamis and whatever, people would say, well, those people got that to happen because God has said that they are not living right or whatever. You know, but you know, things happen. Just like when bad things happen to good people, right? Things just happen.
well, also,
Mystery, right?
I think that we take a convenient line of logic when, if you think of the oppressed as those that are pushed out, when you look at where the natural disasters take place, and they're talking about this in terms of global warming. The effects of global warming will strike first among the poor, because the poor are pushed out to lands that are non-arable, to the ones that are below or nearly below, like Louisiana, who's, you know, down there fighting the tides all the time. And so the storm comes and the levees break and there's flooding and there's death and then there's disease that follows. And those of us who live in the high ground go, huh, they must have done something wrong.
Except when it comes to folks who live in the big houses along the beach.
Right.
Because for them, it's like the state should come in and help us rebuild, and no. Why? You're not helping the people who live, you know, downtown.
In those little
next to-
houses,
Yeah,
yeah.
in those expendable houses, that substandard housing. For them, it's like, we're just gonna raise this so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
But for you folks on the beach, we'll keep rebuilding those places that don't belong there to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not primary houses anyway, most of them.
They make the most news because, you know, you see, and it is a shame. People put a lot of money into those places, but,
They blocked my view.
and that happens too, yeah. I mean, this is like first
I lived in
world-
Brigantine and they blocked my view.
I don't, we sue each other because of lack of sun at a certain time of the day. Please, folks, I don't know. Maybe I'm saying this because I don't own one of those houses.
Do you want to?
No,
See?
yeah, no. It's a shame, but it's where you're standing, what your viewpoint is.
Oh,
most of the
absolutely. perspective has so much to do with it,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, well.
There's so much.
But why,
but-
as Lou has said, though, why, even though you might have been raised in a certain way, like someone else, your perspective is so different. And, I always bring my perspective back mostly to, at college, I read Michael Harrington's The Other America. And I grew up in a lower middle class area in Manhattan, so I didn't live in some wealthy neighborhood, but it still was not the other America.
No.
And that book really, it opened my eyes. But a lot of people, I guess they haven't read The Other America or haven't read something, but haven't had the experience. Is that what makes the difference between those who follow different paths?
Good question.
Well, and I think that one of the reasons I was interested in the dynamics of Germany is because the rise for authoritarianism and for autocracy grows up in the environment of where there are two realities, where there's the reality of the people who have control and then the people who do not. And so at the end of World War I, everybody knows this. Everybody knows that the overwhelming support of the German people for an autocrat, for a dictator, grew out of the fact that they were living in a different world than everybody else was. They felt they had no options, nothing ever worked, and I'm out of it more now than I ever have been recently, but when we did our annual journey into Appalachia, even to northern white Appalachia, the Appalachian Service Project goes south. They go to Kentucky, and predominantly there, it's black and brown people that are in need. But when you go to Maine, you go to Appalachia in Maine, you find these people who they're veterans, they're drug addicted, they have no health care, they have no sanitary conditions, and I've always said it, it's a third world country. It's the other America. And then you sit on their porch while they share their lemonade with you, and you listen to their experience of life, and there now is a coalescing of people who are experiencing that America. And they're saying, the democracy has not helped us. It has not. And so we're ready to try something else. And I think that's what the people of Germany at the end of the World War were saying. We've got to try something else because we're sinking. And the despair among the veterans that I met especially, who had illnesses that there were no doctors to treat, and the clinics were just passing out drugs. They were just passing out drugs to give people the ability to cope with their unbelievable life. And then we come along, and we bring resources, but boy, what kinds of resources were they? I'll never forget this one woman who washed her dishes. She had a need to have a clean house. She washed her dishes, and when the water went down the drain in her sink, it went on the floor.
Oh.
It went nowhere. There was no place for it to go. She was living into almost like, what? And so we hooked up a pipe to that and took the pipe out, and then we found her entire septic system was just being dumped right out on the ground. And by the way, she was 10 feet from stream.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, that happens a lot in the South,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen
just-
that, on TV. A lot of people are like, we're in violation of the rules of our township, but we have no way to fix
Right.
it.
Who
And the
can,
groundwater is getting polluted, so there's gotta be,
we would go into Tennessee, and we would go down there, and in the, instructions to people from the outside, the first lesson was, do not swim in these lakes, and do not drink any of this water. Do not.
it looks good, but,
And because it's contaminated with raw sewage from the houses. So we ended up, after the second year, I wrote, and the team members wrote complaints about this seems really short-sighted. wasn't there a way we
It's
could get?
affecting everyone, yeah.
Couldn't we please get funds to at least dig a re-entry tank that would allow some of this not to run into the stream, but would go down through the sandy soil and filter it? So we did, for 2 houses, they brought in a backhoe, and we dug a septic tank. Yeah.
And, yeah,
And the one place, it actually was a tank, so that then they would call somebody to come and pump it out
Pump
and
it.
take it to a sewage treatment plant. But that is like one little tiny dot, in the sea.
in a whole country full of lead pipes and faulty septic and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so these people are very susceptible to ideas about why do they suffer the way they do, about the incredible blindness of politicians and how failed the political system is. And the political system hasn't failed for me. I don't agree with everything, but just look around a little bit more,
Yeah, I think a lot of folks feel that the way things are now, the system is punishing them, and they want vengeance.
Yeah.
They want justice, but, sometimes they want vengeance. So they're susceptible to hearing somebody talk like a strong man, like, I'm your savior.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix
do
this.
I'm the only one who can do it for you. And I guess it unfortunately rings true with some of those folks. And I can say from my perspective, I don't understand that. It's gonna be worse for you down the line. But I'm not in their position,
No.
so. Be easier to fix the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And
Well-
quit punishing people for being poor.
I think it might be difficult for them to understand that,
Yeah, they don't understand
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
you're not gonna get infrastructure from one guy,
And it also doesn't help that the information you are getting is crummy.
Right.
And that's a big problem nowadays. 'Cause
That's a big transition, I think, a big difference between now and 40 years ago. Yep.
But there's this principle, and maybe it's illustrated here. Again, I went to seminary and college during the big Marxist revolutions in South America and the rise of the Sandinistas. And if you look at their pattern, the people who, communists or Marxists to be exact, would move into sections, and they would go to places where there was no education.
Yeah.
There was no health care, and they brought education. They brought phenomenal systems of education to the people. And then we up here in the north, with our free market economy, how come they're taking over, South America? Because they're taking care of the people.
It's the same story with Hamas.
It
I mean,
is.
That's, when the Palestinian Authority was not working and it was corrupt and righteously, people were right in assuming it was corrupt because it was corrupt. People know that. And Hamas comes in, they're not just telling you that they're going to give you something, they're actually giving
Right,
you
they
stuff.
did it.
And so who are you going to vote for next time it's time to vote? Of course, you don't realize that that's going to be the first and last time you ever get to vote. But, these authoritarian governments understand how to appeal to people.
Oh, absolutely.
And they do a really good job.
So how is this Isaiah not that?
Well-
Because listen to these words then, the promises of you shall enjoy the wealth of nations because of your shame was doubled and dishonor was proclaimed. There's a great promise in this text that now God is going
God
to be
is
the
gonna
one.
do it.
God is going to come and God is going to set you on your feet, bring you back into the fold and help you to get back to your mission. And that language of God the deliverer is the scarier part to me of how the words, the news is being circulated in our culture, because the marriage of the God communities and the state, this language, this theology of God is, calling this person to then be the deliverer, the establishment of justice. I'm going to be the fixer. I'm going to be the one, and God, the one prominent candidate. There's a a video that says that it starts out, I don't know if you've seen this, but it starts out with the language of Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and there was light, and then and it jumps and it goes, and then there was Adam and Eve, and the world turned dark, and things have gotten really bad, and it's been a very, very long time since God has moved to call forth. It is jazzy. It's not cheap. God
course
has
not.
called forth God's spokesperson to come and to bring the world back to right.
I hope that's not a 5-letter word that begins with T and ends with
Oh,
Y.
it is. It is entirely.
I know some people feel that way, that that's God's emissary. If you're,
How?
well, if you're a Jewish person, a contemporary Jewish person reading this, you'd say, you know, I don't need your help, God, because you made a covenant, but hey, we didn't fare very well in the intervening years. To me, it would be kind of disheartening. You have to have a faith that kind of understands that God is not.
Pulling the strings.
Right,
Pulling
and that's
every string.
why I said this admission by the prophet that things happened according to the prophet that were out of God's control. Okay, put that into your thought system. Put that into your theology. And you know, for Presbyterian theologians, that is heresy. You know, it's heresy because the Presbyterians, based on a rational and orderly systematic theology, started with the idea that God is all-powerful and is in control of everything. And again, my missiology professor, who was from Costa Rica, and a brilliant man, said, of course they had an all-powerful God, because they were the all-powerful people on the earth.
There you go.
They were the ones who either thought they ran everything or they wanted to run everything. And that is their culture. And then he said, you know, you travel with me in Costa Rica and down in South America, and you find very few theologies that talk about this great God who is all-powerful and all-knowing. Instead, and Orlando wrote a book called Christ Outside the Gate. And their image of Jesus was the sojourner with us in coping with this world. That God is promised to be with us, but not everything that happens. And I get it. I almost feel like I have to do a cultural translation. I go to visit a family that's going through a difficult time, and inevitably a niece or an aunt or an uncle will say to the suffering one, you know,
Oh, no.
all in God's time, all in God's way. You know, this, you just have to hold on and see how this is part of God's plan.
You may never see how it's part of God's plan.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I know, no, don't be sorry. That's the facts. That, you know, we wonder how people can so readily deny the facts. The church taught them how to do that.
I mean, in Islam, it's God is in control of everything. You're just not ever going to know why things happen.
There you have it. It's
And
the same.
not only that, but this dunya, this world, is just, you know, not the real.
Yeah, it's just
The
temporary.
real comes after. So, you know, the one thing that I always have a problem with is that we're always told that God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. And you know, I sometimes think, I don't know about that, but I know an awful lot of people that have stuff that they haven't been able to handle. But,
And to
yeah.
me, that logic backfires right then and right there, because if a person admits they can't handle what's coming at them, then they also believe somehow they've failed God. Like I didn't stay on the wagon, you know, I didn't hold on to the train. If I could have waited longer and waited for God,
Yeah.
but I can't, and I, you know, I've
At
changed.
least in Islam, that's not the general feeling. It's
Right.
whatever happens, God had a plan, but, you know, you're not supposed to understand it all, and you never will. So
So
it
it's not your
doesn't
fault.
necessarily mean it's your fault. It just means, you know, continue to try and see the good in others, and do as much good as you can to try and, I guess, the idea in Judaism is tikkun olam, you know, repair the world.
Right,
That's your mission.
repairs of the breach.
Don't assume that, because things happen, it's because you're bad. Just continue with that mission, which I kind of like better than assuming that, you did something horrible, to have the horrible things happen to you. But I guess because I was raised Presbyterian, I don't like to think of God as knowing that a bad thing's going to happen and could fix it and doesn't. So, so
And-
now I'm trying to balance those two kinds of thoughts and like, I don't, it's hard. It's hard to make them fit together in a pleasing way. Yeah,
Well.
it depends on what kind of a day you wake up to, I guess.
Have you heard in college and young life and the appeal to young college students, have you ever heard the tapestry theory? That life is,
Oh, sure.
you know,
On the top, it's,
yeah, you just can't see
We're-
this side of the tapestry.
Oh,
All you can see
we're
is
thinking of the
You don't
knots.
see
and
the
the-
messy
side.
stuff.
And I go, okay, who thinks that really is what's happening? Because if in God's world, it's all beautiful patterns of flowers and vines and it's all just a wonderful tapestry, then I go, what does God's view of life have to do with mine?
That's a good point.
Because I don't see that. I don't feel that. That is not what life is. So
You're
again,
looking at those knots, aren't you?
yeah, that's right. I'm looking at the knots, I'm looking at the torn threads and the tie-offs that didn't work. And so then I think part of what happens, I said this a little guy, we wonder how in the United States, how are people so willing and able to deny what is right in front of them, holding on to the hope of a different reality coming from what's going on. And I say, there it is. We've trained people to think this way. We brought them into churches, we brought them into synagogues, and we have told them, it doesn't matter what it looks like, it doesn't matter what you think happened. What really happened here is, it's like the parent who says, this is gonna hurt me more than it hurts you. But the truth is, there's an awful lot of children that are seriously hurt, and the parents are barely affected. I just cannot get into that lockstep way of thinking. And that's why, like in my sermon on Sunday, I say, no one knows the passion with which I say it, it's like, life is a mystery. It is a mystery.
I'd rather think of that. I'm never going to understand why things happen, at least not in this lifetime. So just continue on trying to do the best you can. And what else can you do? And
Yeah.
it's not going to be always beautiful, and it's not always going to be awful. It's going to be a lot of all kinds of stuff. Deal with it.
And when
It
things,
doesn't make me happy to think that
No.
way, because I think that we deserve to have the best of blah, blah, blah. But it's not going to be.
and when life really does become broken shards of glass, when it really does, like, shatter, the appeal to say, oh, all in God's plan, whatever, I have no interest in that at all. But I do think that resurrection theology says, look deep into this experience. Look deep into it. Because if you look deep into the darkness, there may be a ray of light
Right.
that
Right.
you can see. And this psalm, this passage says this, look, it says, for earth brings forth its shoots, as a garden causes what is sown in it to spring up. And I was thinking, I walked out of my house the other day, the daffodils are
Yeah,
like
starting-
Springing up.
And that's it, that's the sign that out of what died, out of what
Exactly.
happened, the seeds of hope are there.
Yep.
The possibility for something good to come out of what never changes. It was bad, it is bad. It is death, it's heartbreak, it's all that. But in those experiences, out of those experiences of chaos, can come a tender shoot that might actually lead to yet something good might happen in your life.
Just look around. The signs are all around.
Yeah.
There's crap going on, but there's beautiful things too. The world is a mix of both. And in Islam, we're promised too of a resurrection. It's gonna be led by Jesus, you know. Jesus is coming back in the Quran too, it says.
Well, you Muslims are trying to make friends with Jesus, I get it.
We share a common thread between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So the second coming of Christ is also a belief in Islam. So, you know, if you like the resurrection story, it's there too.
Yeah.
So,
My
when crap
frustration,
happens, look to the resurrection.
my frustration, again,
I,
as a child living, I had my eyes wide open as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, listening to the theology of the church that was around me. And what I learned was they never looked for the shoot.
no?
No, they always deferred to the life after death.
Oh, yeah.
They never looked for the redeeming
You'll
thing
get your
that was
rewards.
happening. So they would come to church and spend all day in church, and they would sing the songs of the new Jerusalem, of the world that was coming,
Right.
of hoping and praying for Jesus to come. And in the meantime, they were never directed into the crisis that had happened, hoping for some this world sign of God's constance and God's favor. It was always
future.
for the future. Come, Lord Jesus, come now, come and deliver me from this world. I'm only a sojourner in this land.
Yeah, but as you're here, there's a lot to be done.
Only thing there
Don't
is to
just
be,
sit back and go, I can't do
Nope.
a thing. I
the
mean,
only thing to be done is to put your eyes on the eastern horizon and wait for Jesus to come. And just, that's how you deal with hardship, that's how you deal with enemies. So just,
well, if
I-
it appeals, that's fine. I mean, who's to say?
I just,
But it's ignoring everyone else
yes,
and the
absolutely.
needs. And what God's work is for you while you're here.
Yeah, but this world is only a
Yeah.
mirage. This world is only
Yeah.
a mirage. It's almost like some of the philosophers, the ancient philosophers, who said, you know, the life around you is just there to deceive you and to lead you astray, and that you're better off just to focus on that which is eternal and stay away. Even the early Christian monks who would climb up the towers, you know, and sit on top of these pillars, you know, they would sit up there with their arms folded and their legs crossed and don't eat food and everything, and they're shunning all the world, the created order. Okay, really? So
That's it.
why
You
did
know, you
God
gotta
bother to
have that.
create the world?
exactly,
then?
exactly.
Right. I mean, it's not only a test. It is a test in some ways, though, too, because what are you doing? Are you just sitting there, you know, wasting your time? Or are you trying to repair the world, which I think is the mission? Be a blessing. You're here. Don't just, you know, it may be that it's fleeting, I hope, because I believe in an afterlife and in the resurrection. And that should be a longer period of time than my brief time here. But what did you do in your brief time here? The reality is you are here. And that's the only reality you're gonna know for absolutely sure until something else happens. So why not make the best of what, you know, the gifts you've been given? And I don't know.
I feel like it's, a lot of it has to do with your focus. You know, if you focus on all bad, that's what you're gonna see. That's how you're gonna experience. But if you focus on the good that's around you, whether it's, you know, acts of charity or it's the creation bursting forth in the spring or whatever, then your whole attitude changes, I think. And I really think that's where I get my comfort. That,
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Me too. And I go back to say,
And God created it, you
That's
know?
right. That's big. Yeah,
That's where, you know, I
the
really.
Bible starts with the story of a real life created for real human beings with real purpose in it. And yeah, it's all full of the signs of brokenness and all that is there, the chaos reigns in, but in the middle of it all, you hold on for the original purpose of God in joy. God created the world and everything that's in it, for the sheer desire of pleasure and for, and
It was
beauty.
good.
I mean, oh my goodness, the sunset 2 nights ago was the most.
And the moon,
the
oh
moon.
my gosh.
It is, in fact, we have this new puppy, and I've had a lot of dogs in my life, I really have. I have never had a dog who, at night, she has to go out, and she'll tap on the door, she goes out, she runs into the middle of the lawn, and she sits,
Looks up.
and she looks up.
Aw.
And she must have really good eyesight, because I'll watch her, and she's moving, her head is moving. She's seen a satellite. You know, that little dot?
No.
Yeah, and she's watching the satellite go over. And then on those nights where the moon was so bright, I had to drag her in because she's
She was
sitting
enjoying
out there, just literally enjoying the moon. I have never
That's
seen
so
a dog
cool.
do this, never. And she'll go out in the daytime, and a bird will fly over. She stops what she's doing, she watches the bird fly the whole way till it can't be seen anymore. So,
She's really
Take some lessons
yeah,
from
I
her,
know,
huh?
so you know what I find myself doing?
looking up.
I've set a chair out there and I'm, okay, what are we gonna watch? You know, it's weird.
Dogs are good teachers
It's just
sometimes, yeah.
absolutely weird.
That's great.
That she's taking in the beauty of the earth and the wonder and the magnitude of everything that is going on around her.
Seems pleasurable to her, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness, it is. And I think, well, if a dog can get
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
why can't I
Yeah.
take some more of that in? Because I think that is biblical faith. I think
It
biblical
is.
faith says creation is not a mirage.
Right.
I had a roommate in college who was a fellow philosophy major, and we used to walk on the way up to class, and he would repeat this several times. He would say, I'm gonna tell you, Lou, if in the end, this all turns out to be, he goes, if I hear toward the end of my life, this was a test. And if it had been real life, you would have been told where to tune. He goes, I'm really gonna be mad. I'm really, if this is all just about a test, you know, there were philosophers who said, that's
Yeah.
what it's all about.
Right.
This is just a test. This is just, how well will you do on this exam? And, yeah, no, I'm with him. I'm not interested in just a test.
Even if it is a test, it's nice to have nice surroundings for your test taking.
Well, yeah,
I think it's wonderful.
or tests that are part of courses for learning and expanding. Nothing wrong with tests.
Right.
Like helping you to really solidify what you've learned. Good, that's all good.
It's, again, though, it's easy to say that in a position of, you know,
Comfort?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's why Jesus came to afflict the comfortable
yeah.
and comfort
The
the
afflicted.
afflicted. Don't say that in a wealthy church, though, or a synagogue or masjid, no.
So, well, you're right, so let me just ask you this question then. So, I've served, I think this is my 6th church I've served. None of the prior 5 churches could you go in and really preach that. You know, you can't, because the word of that to the wealthy, and wealthy is a relative term, you know, when my daughter's teaching school in Maryland, in DC, and the schools are overpopulated and understaffed, and the number of underprivileged, oppressed people are all over the place. And she's in there pouring her heart out, trying to do a wonderful education, and then she gets contacted by one of the other teachers to say, you know, we could make a little extra money if you want to on the side, babysitting. And so she went out on one of these jaunts for babysitting.
No.
She said, it was like the Taj Mahal. These people are living in houses
Oh, I see.
alongside the
You're
poor.
not babysitting for the kids you're,
No.
oh, okay,
no,
I got
you're
it.
babysitting for the people that can afford to pay you $50 an hour to come and watch their children while they go play paddleball. You know, and
Exactly.
the wealth of the wealthy
Right there.
is right there. It's staggering.
It is something, though, that keeps your eyes from really seeing what's going on in the
Right.
world. Okay, this is another story, Barbara will remember this one. There was a sermon many years ago And in it was the parable of the guy who, it's easier to go through the camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich guy to get to heaven. And a member of the congregation said, "Where are you getting that story from?" as a complaint afterwards. And the response was, "Jesus." But that's the idea, it's like you've never heard that before?
Wow.
As a wealthy person, maybe not, it doesn't hit home the same way, because you don't want to think of yourself as being selfish. Who does? I mean, I sit here in comfort.
Yeah.
I try to do what I can, but I also have the idea that, I deserve some of the stuff. I work hard,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to get blinded by that. But to have somebody call out your sermon because of something that Jesus said, it wasn't the pastor, those were not my words, that was,
Yeah.
I think it says a lot about wealth and perspective and,
Yeah, that was an unfortunate story to take to task. All right, well, I think we've heard Isaiah 61,
yeah.
and maybe we've heard how it lands, perhaps, in our lives, and so I'm grateful for your conversation along the way. Didn't get to say goodbye to Paulette.
No, she
She's
leaves at 11,
off
that's
on
right.
her.
Yeah,
Don't forget what she's doing. Is it another Bible study
I
she
think
goes
it's
to?
another
Yeah,
study from her other church.
Yeah.
she can't get enough.
Yeah,
Well,
and
Good
I
for her.
still don't know the answers.
Yeah, I still don't know the answer,
oh, well.
and I came for the answer.
I want somebody to tell me. Maybe the guy with the T and the P at the end of his name.
Yeah.
He
Maybe.
has the answers.
He's got them.
He says he
says
has
he
the
does.
answers.
Lois Gassman used to say, I come to Bible study with my questions, and I want answers. I go home with more questions than I had when I came in. And if something came up in the discussion of the Bible study, something that she felt was really helpful, she would say, "This is all wasted on an old woman."
Oh,
I remember her saying.
Never.
All
You know,
wasted.
I keep saying, I love this saying, live every day as if it's your last, but learn every day as if you have eternity.
I like that.
There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with getting wisdom, and hopefully you will live every day wiser, and hopefully your legacy will give it to others. But
there you go.
Yeah.
you can't stop learning, that's for sure.
Well, you can, but you probably shouldn't.
I can't.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. It's good to see you. Thank you to those who joined us online, and
You again. Okay,
All right.
we'll see you all very soon.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.